This is the Unstuck movement. These are true testimonies of breakthrough. This platform is to help give you examples of real life breakthroughs, to let you know that it's possible for you wherever you might be stuck at in life and in business. Today we have the incredible Franchelle Caesar with us on the podcast. And Franchelle, I love to jump in right off the bat with a powerful question to get right to the root of the matter. You have an incredible story of paying off $600,000 in debt in a year. But I need to know, what was the turning point for you that made you take control of your finances and in turn also take control of your life?
Yes. So there were actually two that I remember as though they were yesterday. One was during one of the previous elections. I guess it was 2016. I was sitting in the living room, turned to my stepdad, and I said, how do
I'm
people
sorry, hang on 1 second.
Sure.
As we're starting this podcast, I'm realizing that my microphone is not plugged in correctly. So I probably sound a lot different now.
You do. It's very clear.
There we go. Okay. I'm sorry. I know we're live, but I had to fix that. I was like, holy shoot, that needs to be fixed. So go ahead. I apologize.
Yeah, I was happy it's not an emergency, like a bad thing happening. But yeah, no, I think it was a 2016 election. I was sitting there. I used to really be into politics, and I was sitting there with my dad, and I said, how do people become wealthy? Right? Like I was working hard every day. And I wonder, like, what was the thing? And he said, you find something that people need and you give it to them. And that never left me. And at the time I was practicing medicine, and I thought, okay, I'm working, but I was always thinking, like, what is it that people need that is not, being provided for, that I can help them with? And little did I know that question really unlocked something in the universe, and God started to put me on this path to where I could provide something that people need. The other thing that really sealed the deal was I had twins, and in 2015, and I had taken like this 13-week maternity leave, and I was a workaholic. I loved to work, and I realized I didn't want to go back to work. And I was like, I got to figure out something else. I got to do something else. I don't want to go back to work. And I think the combination of those and then some other steps along the path really completely changed the trajectory of my life.
Incredible. It's sometimes, not all the time, not sometimes, I believe all the time in life, we really need to be paying attention. And sometimes things will happen to us that force us to pay attention, that bring about those gigantic breakthroughs and those gigantic changes. So I love that, that things popped up in your life that were like, okay, there needs to be some major changes that happen right now that created some incredible breakthroughs for you, that changed the direction of where you went. And now I love talking about making your mess your message. And it's obvious that mess that you had, you cleaned that up, which became an incredible message that has changed so many people's lives. So if people don't know about you, Franchelle Caesar in 2018 was a medical doctor, over $600,000 in debt. Now, as the founder of the Financial School for Spenders, she helps others find financial freedom, just as she found financial freedom. I got to shout out the sponsor of this podcast also, the Connected Leaders Academy. If you're looking for a place where incredible entrepreneurs, heart-centered leaders from all over the world, over 400, come together on a regular basis to help and serve one another, check out connectedleadersacademy.com. Now, Franchelle, I'm fascinated, I imagine, as everybody else is, somebody who has $600,000 in debt, and in 1 year, you paid that off. How is that even possible? And what did that look like for you? Step by step, that journey is probably a longer journey, but just in general, like what mindset shift happened that caused that to happen?
Yeah. So it's fascinating because I think a lot of spenders in particular will tell you that it wasn't a problem at the time. Like buying things, not everybody, but a lot of people do this, right? We buy things, we finance things. You buy your car, you don't pay for it all at once. You pay over time, you buy your home. So having debt is normalized in our society. And so at the time when I had over $600,000 worth of debt, it was not a problem until I wanted to leave my job. And then it became this obstacle that was standing between me and the life I wanted to live and to be home with my kids or have, I wanted to be able to, if I wanted to work in a library or something, just something that fed my soul where I didn't have to pay the bills. I wanted to have something like that. So having debt, um, is not a problem until it becomes a problem. So a lot of people are maybe out there who have debt and they're just paying payments and they don't realize that you could have zero payments. And that's where I was when all this started. I was just paying payments. I made a lot of money, so I had a lot of payments, and it was not a problem. But I was realizing that, if I want to leave, if I don't have all of these bills, if all I have to pay for is gas in my car, groceries, you're giving yourself a massive raise. So that's the mindset shift that happened first. And I actually did this, and I would encourage your listeners to do this if you have debt. Take a piece of paper, fold it in half the long way. On one side, write all the bills you're paying monthly. On the other side, write all the bills that you would pay if you didn't have any kind of finance payments or debt or anything like that. It's a huge difference. And when you calculate, like, if I only had to pay this much per month, I would bring home so much more of my paycheck that I actually get to keep, save, enjoy, invest, all the things. And so that was a big mindset shift for me. But the mindset shift was the beginning, right? Because then it's like the nuts and bolts of like, how do we get out of this? Even still, and I think what makes my program different from other financial programs is that even still, it didn't seem like a problem. My debt was never a problem. None of my clients' debt is a problem. None of their goals are a problem. Like, it was always, this is like a puzzle that I need to solve. And it was fun. I actually had fun paying off debt, which most people are like, how you have fun? I wasn't stressed. I was probably stressed at the very beginning because I was trying to manage money based on the way we're normally taught how. So that was stressful for me. I tried that for about 2 months, 3 months. And I remember being in tears and thinking, here's a crossroads, right? There's a fork in the road. I can either be miserable for 5 years trying to pay this off, or I could turn this into a game and have fun with it. And so I decided to make it a game and have fun with it. And so the whole process went a lot faster because I was accepting of where I was and I wasn't stressed out. So
that's so big. Accepting where you are instead of avoiding it, right? Being in denial about where you are is going to keep you there forever, right? It's the old sticking your head in the sand, right? Just kind of keeping yourself blocked from that thing. It's procrastination. It's fear, right? That's a fear response. And I always think of the quote: "It's better to know the pain of discipline and the pain of regret." Right. Yes. So the pain of discipline is going to hurt right now, but it's going to pay off in the long run. The pain of regret, you're going to feel okay now, but not really. You're still stressed out right now, but you're going to really feel that pain later on. When you said you learned how to managing money the way we are normally taught how, okay, so what does that mean?
Yeah. So those first few months, so I have to say this, I never looked at my money. When my clients come in, I'm like, you don't look at your money, do you? Most of them do not look because there's so much shame and guilt and all this baggage from childhood and how we handle money and how we spend, to where we just avoid it, right? You put the bills on auto payment, or you sit down, and do it one time and leave it, set it and forget it. So I wasn't actively managing my money. I was just paying the bills without a plan or a goal or anything. So when I realized that I had, I wanted to get rid of the payments so that I could bring more money home and save more and switch careers, I actually had to learn how to manage money. And so the way that I started was the way that most people start. I was listening to Dave Ramsey, and I was going to live on a budget, right? I was going to create a written budget and live on that budget every month. And that was a nightmare. And this was when I really started to notice that my brain does not process finances that way. Like it felt incredibly difficult. It felt like fortune telling. I was like, okay, so I'm going to make this prediction of what's going to happen this one month. And guess what? If somebody, which this happens, especially for spenders, we're like, oh, there's this opportunity. Somebody's going to a concert. I want to go. Right. But it's like, oh no, you only have, $67 left in your entertainment bucket. And so we just pull it from another bucket and put it over there, which, is fine. But if you're the kind of like rule follower personality, it's like, why did I even create this plan? Right. And so now that I've been doing this for several years, I can understand how people do live on a budget. But coming from never managing money to now you're going to budget every month, I didn't know where to start. I had no clue. And so I was trying to do it that way. And I was following people on Instagram. Instagram was kind of like new and it's the whole like fresh space back then. And I was trying to learn from people and it was so frustrating. And so what I did was one day I just wiped it all away. I said, okay, if I were starting from scratch, right? And I was thinking, I know I'm a smart person because I know I've done a lot of things in my life. I'd gone through medical school, right? So I was like, I know that this isn't hard because I can't get it. I think this is hard because this process isn't working for me.
Mm.
And I think in the past, we've accepted that when financial experts tell us this is how you do it, we go, oh, okay, yes, let's learn. This is how we do it. But I think that that's only because you never had someone with a spender's brain who came to the table to say, what if there's another way to do it? And so I wiped all that away and I said, I think there's another way to do this. I'm going to figure out a different way to do it for me, not thinking I was going to help everybody else. I just thought I need to do this for me because if I pay off this debt, I can get a different job. And so I ended up creating this whole other system that worked for me. And then I paid off the debt and then people started asking me to help them. And so that's kind of where it started. But I was just like, there's a puzzle. It's like a big old tangled ball of yarn. There's a ball of yarn in front of me. I'm not going to read a book to figure out how to untangle the yarn. I'm just going to sit here and figure out how to untangle the yarn. And so that's what happened. And now we have a process where we don't budget at all, but we are very effective.
Fascinating. It makes me think of kind of like the school system and how we're taught to learn. Studies have shown, research has shown that only 20% of people actually learn the way that school teaches us.
Yeah.
Right? Most of us learn through actually doing things, physically seeing things, being in a real situation. That's why mentorships and things like that always seem to work so much better.
Yep.
But it's very clear that a lot of the systems that are set up work for a few, maybe a smaller majority of people, but most people, that's not how we usually do things. And just going back to what you said a few minutes ago, you said paying off debt became fun. So you said not only was it now not like you were now paying attention to your money, it was actually fun. What was where's the fun part there? Because people hear that and they're like, how could that possibly be enjoyable? But seeing your money, I could see how seeing your money, your debt coming down would be enjoyable. What was the fun part of that for you?
Yeah, the fun part was like the detective work of it. And so for like with my clients, I have to find out what lights you up. What is it that, so I'll talk about for me and then I'll tell you how I apply this to other people. But for me, I love seeing progress, check boxes. I love making something into a game. At that time, I had 2-year-olds. They were either 2 or 3 years old. And I love bringing my toddlers into it. And so I like to go shopping when I'm feeling stressed. I like the dopamine hit. I like to wander around the store. I could wander around Hobby Lobby for hours just to get out of the house. Like that was my thing. And so I spent money because I was just trying to escape.
Yeah.
And so I would have my kids in the cart and I taught them, this is one of the things we did. I taught them that if I lingered at something too long, that they would start yelling out, "Bazinga!" Like I just had like this little phrase that I had them yelling out. And I got that phrase from
Isn't that the Big Bang Theory?
No, it comes from oh my gosh, I wish I looked this up beforehand. It was a book that I was reading one of the old school financial freedom people, we might have to link it in the notes because I can't remember now. Yeah. But she would say bazinga in her book. And so I taught my kids how to say it. And I had twins. One of them always had his pacifier in. So it was always my daughter who would like yell it out. But if I lingered at something too long in the store, she'd yell that out. And that would be my cue to like drop it and leave. Also, I didn't restrict myself from putting things in the cart. So we'd put all the things in the cart. And then right before checkout, we'd run around the store and put all the things back. I wouldn't just ditch them. I wouldn't ditch them in random places. Like I'd actually put them back to where I got them from. Okay. And so that was something that it allowed me to get that feeling of like, I'm putting this thing in my cart, but you don't have to take everything home. Yeah. And I've taught my kids this too. We'll go to the toy aisle and like, you can look at it, you can hold it, you can explore, but we're not taking it home. You have things at home. And so those were like the early processes that now are built into my program. But at the time I was just trying to, scratch the itch of needing to be out there shopping, but also not to spend the money. And it evolved over time. So
interesting. I like that a lot because I actually just did that this morning. On, of course, Temu. I get an email right from Temu, which there's a lot of Temu is weird. There's so much nice stuff. But anyways, I'm looking at like sports shorts, like workout shorts, and I don't need any. I have like 15 pairs of workout shorts. Like, and I have like 3 up on the screen. I'm like, man, which one of these should I buy? And I'm looking at them and I'm like, I don't need any of them.
Right.
so I just closed it all out. It was like, this is stupid. But but actually just the enjoyment of like looking at them, like it's like I got something out of my system that I needed to get out of my system. But then
it's that hunt, that thrill of the hunt. Yeah. And you brought up a really good part of what I would do is I had a mantra that I would memorize so that, because when you're in the moment and the emotions are high, you're not going to be able to access your logical mind and think, oh, but my goal is this, which is a lot of times why budgets don't work for spenders. Because when you're in the emotions, you're not going to say, oh, you only have $67 left in your entertainment budget. You're going to think about that on the way to the car when your basket is full of stuff you just bought. But I had a mantra and it was, I have everything that I need. Yeah. Which is very different from I don't need anything else. It's a different energy. I have everything that I need is very positive, very abundant. And it makes you think of all the, gym shorts or whatever you have at home. Because you're like, I have everything that I need. It's only 7 days in the week. I work out 5 days. I have, 18 pairs of gym shorts. I think I'm good.
Right.
Right. But
I'm writing this down right now.
But if you think I don't need anything else, a lot of times we automatically want to rebel against that and say, who do you think you're, even though we're talking to ourselves, who do you think you are telling me I don't need anything else? I absolutely do need this. This is a different shade of crimson than the ones I already have. Right? And then you start negotiating with yourself. And typically we don't win those battles.
That's really good because it's also really true, right? I have everything that I need. I mean, I think for most people, we have our basic needs met. And so adding things to it might feel like it's the right thing, but we don't actually need anything. And we're especially in the world of comparison that we live in, we're getting sucked into what other people have. It's making us think like, holy smokes, I need that too. But it's so true. I have everything that I need, and we possess all those things already. I love that. So we're going to pause for 60 seconds to shout out the sponsor. But before we do, what I want to go into when we come back, I love talking about people's values, and your values, your highest values are freedom and ease. And I've never heard anybody put ease up there as one of their top values. And you had a quote from Michelle, is it Michelle Rohr? If this was easy, what would it look like? I love that quote. And I love the fact that you hold ease at such a high value. We're going to talk about why that is and how you apply that when we come back in 60 seconds.
Hi, my name is Jose Escobar, and I'm the founder and CEO of the Connected Leaders Academy. We're a growing tribe, a community of entrepreneurs all over the world, globally, all across the country, high performers, titans of industry. If you're an entrepreneur and you're looking to grow personally and professionally, scale your influence, develop your skill sets, move the needle in your business, more clients, more money, more profit, the bottom line, and of course, grow your circle and your network like never before, this is where you want to be. Join the Connected Leaders Academy today. We are scaling massively. We want to welcome you in. Check me out on Instagram and on Facebook, the @ JAESCO25. We look forward to having you join us. Take care.
So, Franchelle, I'm loving this conversation. It is so good. And I love the fact that one of your highest values is ease.
Mm-hmm.
What is it about that word and about ease that you hold so high in your life?
So it comes down to the idea of I'm a recovering perfectionist, and I at times I find myself overthinking things or overcomplicating things, and I catch myself by reminding, that like ease is that North Star. I remind myself, if this were easy, what would it look like? So that I don't go down this rabbit hole of making things bigger and more complicated than they have to be. Um, Also, just in daily life, when you're on the right path, that path will be smooth. It'll be easy, right? Things won't always be easy, obviously. Like as entrepreneurs, we know that we fail forward and failure is the way and things are not always easy. But if it feels like it's just a complete roadblock, or you've got some problem in a headlock and you're trying to work it out, I stop and I pause and I'm like, okay, what am I trying to control here? Or what do I feel like I'm trying to be controlled by? And kind of make that way a little bit straight. Because like, I love to work. I don't, even my hardest day as an entrepreneur is easier than my easiest day as a doctor. Like that's just bottom line, because that profession wasn't suited for me. That wasn't the easiest path for me. So I always look for where the ease is, not that life should just be easy, but like, where is the ease that makes things, you can be more purposeful and have more impact because you're not trying to, reinvent the wheel.
It makes me think, because this is so true, and that's such a great statement to make, because for many of us, there are things that we are really good at that are hard for us, or there's things that we're really good at that drain us. And so a lot of us end up getting into professions that we're good at, but they're draining us and they're not filling us up.
Yeah.
And I imagine for you, especially being an MD, like talk about if that's not something that's filling you up, it is going to drain you in a major way. I mean, I can only imagine how difficult that job is. I always think of nurses. Like if you're going to be a nurse and you're good at it, but it drains you, you're going to have a really, really hard time, because it's such a demanding, the medical profession is so demanding.
Yes.
And so very, very important, I think, that in life it's no matter what phase of life we're in, just starting out in our career, or we're 30, 40 years into our career, if we're drained all the time, even though we're talented at something, how could this be easier, and what could we do to find more ease?
Right. And you don't necessarily have to change everything you're doing, but if you look at all the things you're doing and you can find an easier way to do something you're already doing, it makes a huge difference. I remember I had a law of attraction coach way back around this whole time in 2018, 2019. And he was saying, okay, we're going to do this, game for this month where you only do the things at work that feel easy and you love. And I was like, oh, then I'm going to get fired, because there's nothing that feels easier that I love. And he said, Fran, do the things you have to do in a way that feels easy to you. Changed everything. I used to have to do all these reports and they had deadlines and it was this whole thing. What I do, I added a checklist because I love checklists. So when I added a checklist and I do one part and I check it off, like that lit me up. And it was like, you don't have to change what you're doing. You just have to change the way you do it and make it work for you. But in order to do that, you also have to know yourself. You have to know what lights you up. And that's where the work is.
100%. That's where the work is. And I've talked about this in the podcast, and I talk about this with clients that I work with too. There's a great book called Deep Work. And the whole concept of the book Deep Work is you need to do this deep work on the things that are important to you. And that deep work is going to be probably not me sitting in front of 3 screens right now, right? This is not the deep work. Me is on my couch or outside with a notepad and a pen, or just one Google Doc opened on my computer. and that's it open on the computer. And just really understanding me, prayer, meditation, just getting to know myself better so that I can find where is the ease. And so if I could even give an example from my own life, this podcast was something that I implemented because I spent 20 years in broadcasting. I had cut out broadcasting basically from my life, but I loved it so much, and I was doing coaching, but I found that I was not as fulfilled as I knew that I should have been doing something that I really like to do. So I brought broadcasting back into it because I love doing this. And over this past year, I've been making this podcast like the kind of the core or the hub for my business that everything kind of flows out of. And so it's changed everything for me, because now I get to do something that I love to do that also fills me up and complements my business and helps it grow. And I think for all of us, we need to spend that time figuring that thing out.
Yeah.
How did you figure that out for yourself? What time did you spend with yourself to uncover that?
It's fascinating how when you think something is not working in your life, how much we talked about this before we had a conversation. When you're going forward, it's like, this doesn't make any sense. Why is this part of my life? But when you look backwards, it's like, this absolutely had to happen this way.
Mm-hmm.
So I was leaving hospital medicine, and I was going to get a different job because I was burned out, because I was doing all the things that didn't light me up. I was just like overworked, overtired. And so I had 2 job offers. One was a temporary position over an hour away from my house, which, I had these 2 little babies. I didn't want to leave them. The other one was about 20 minutes away. It was a permanent position. It was a lot more involved, a lot more similar to what I came out of from the hospital. And I decided to take the job that had this long commute. And that commute, I was really stressed about the commute because that added 2 more hours onto my day, at least. But in hindsight, it turned out to be the biggest blessing, because sitting in the car, which is very meditative, right? You're doing this. I had 2 long, straight freeways, and you're in there, and your part of your mind is occupied on the operations of driving, and the other part is just kind of prancing around thinking about life. And I had, a year of just sitting in my car and thinking about, what is it about medicine that I'm good at and I would want to take to another career? What is it that people would need, and what could I monetize? And what I loved about medicine was talking to the people. I love talking to my patients, and I also love talking to the nurses and the staff. And I was like, what am I talking to them about? Well, they're telling me their big old ball of wound up yarn, and I'm helping them untangle it. I didn't know what coaching was at the time. No idea. But I knew I liked to talk to people and I like to help people. So, and it's so fascinating because during this time, I was untangling my debt stuff. By the time I finished paying off my debt, I didn't know that would be the next step. But as people came to me to talk about money, I was talking to them about money, which is what I love to do. And I realized that I could form a group and charge people, and they could come and learn. And so it all kind of drifted together. But it was that uninterrupted, undisturbed time of silence, of thinking, of getting to know myself, of figuring out, because I was in a midlife crisis, and I was like, I can't throw the baby out with the bathwater. What is it about this 20 years of my life that was working? Because it wasn't that everything wasn't working. It was just some parts of it weren't working. What was working? And I pulled out those good things and then turned that into what I do every day. So now what I do is pure what I love, because I spent the time figuring out, okay, what is it that I like? What don't I like?
Yeah, that is under the surface, right? I love to ask people that question, because like, what is it about what you're doing that you really do love? Because you probably ended up somewhere where you are getting somewhat fulfilled from the thing that you have. It's just not the whole of it. And so finding out, okay, what was it about this initially that's really giving me life, and how can I take this and apply it to my life all the time? I love that. That is so good, because it is exactly, there's a blessing in everything, right? Mm-hmm. But we have to look for it. And when you look for the blessing and you pay attention, you're going to find it. But also, like you said, giving yourself the space to find it. So for me, bike riding, like bicycle riding, is the best place for me, because I'm exercising my mind's occupied on this like repetitive motion, and it can be hard, it can be easy, but my mind is free. I don't have to think all that. Might have to be alert as to what's going on, but I'm free to like think, and I have the best thoughts, the best things come to me whenever I'm doing that. So we all need that space in our life too. Of what is that for us?
Yeah, absolutely.
And if we're not able to find that, and if we're not able to give ourselves that space, I was just talking to a woman today, and I said, do you have 10 minutes a day to get some space? And she's like, I don't. And I'm like, you do. Number one, you have the space. You need to give yourself that space, and you need to. This might sound so like woo-woo, but we're human beings. We're not human doings.
Exactly.
So if you're always doing, you're never going to know who you are. You're never going to know who you be. But if you're being, then you're going to do the right things, because you're going to come from a place of this is who I am.
Absolutely.
And it sounds complicated, but it's a very subtle shift, I think, that will change will change your mindset. So that advice is so powerful and so foundational.
And I tell people, the ones who feel like they're too busy to start, I tell them to start in the shower. That's
a good place.
Repetitive motion, you know how to lather up and scrub. Let it be quiet. Tell people, this is my private time. Don't interrupt me. Don't have the kids knocking on the door. Like, start in the shower. That's 10, 15 minutes that you have to yourself. And then also in the car. Our best ideas, our best miracles come in the shower and in the car. Turn the radio off. Be alone with your thoughts. Just drive. And let that be your time. You don't have to, make it more complicated than that. Let it be easy. If it was easy, what would it look like?
And that's so true. And the things of God are simple. I believe this. Like, and we're now in a society where we can fill us up with something 24/7, 365. So when I'm making food or cutting the grass, instead of, because this was me, there's a YouTube video I could be watching. There's something I could be listening to. And not saying that stuff's bad, because I listen to a lot of really good content, but at the same time, I don't need it. I need to tap into what's going on with me and get some answers here. So giving yourself that space. And especially with little kids, if you have little kids in your life, you really need to find ways to give yourself that space, because it's going to fill you up. It's gonna have a huge impact on you. So I love that advice. So I think we've already touched on some of these things, but I'm curious, people who are involved in your financial school for spenders, what sets that platform apart from other programs? Because there's so many programs out there to help you get out of debt, to help you have a better understanding of money and a better relationship with money. What sets you apart with what you do?
Yeah, so there's a few really big things that I've heard from our students. One is the acceptance and the non-judgmental approach we take. 9 times out of 10, if somebody tells me something, I'm like, yeah, it's true, right? You're expecting to hear like, oh no, let's get this for you. Got to work this out. This is going to be your detriment. I'm like, no, yes, of course you like Hobby Lobby. Who doesn't like Hobby Lobby? It's full of magical things and it smells good and there's music, right? And so it's like we always start with the premise of, you were born with this, kind of nature of being a spender. It's easier for you to spend than to save. You can save, yes, you can, but it's easier. That's one of the things you like. I have twins. One is a saver, one's a spender. I could tell that immediately, because when the first time I gave them $1, my daughter, hers was gone in like a minute. We didn't know where it was. It was like in her car seat. My son still has it. Like, it was just, 9 years later, he's got his first little, right? And so it's like, I take it as a given that you want to spend. I take it that you want to go on vacation. I take it that you want to take your kids to Disney World, like all the things. We don't make that a problem. We build that into, yes, of course, that's the foundational truth. And then I've noticed over the time that I've been coaching that there are 4 distinct patterns that I've seen. And I call them toxic spending patterns now, because I've learned that in order to market, I have to, like, pour salt in people's wounds and their pain points, because normally my marketing is not like, I wouldn't say toxic, I wouldn't, because that's judgmental, right? And I would always be very forgiving about things, but now I've learned that until you come into the space, I have to make you feel bad about your debt and all the things that you're doing.
Well, you already do feel bad about it anyways. The person already does feel bad about it, so you're just highlighting that.
I have to highlight it, which doesn't always make me feel great. But I've noticed that there are 4 distinct personalities, and they all have a motivation. All of our spending makes sense. It all makes sense. When people say, I don't know why I do that, I don't know why I do that, I'm like, there is definitely a reason why you do that. And once we figure out what that reason is, we're powerful, because now you can choose to keep doing that, or you can choose to make a change. But that awareness will change everything for you. And so what we do, we don't focus on the behavior at all. Like I say, don't cancel anything, don't cut up anything, don't, stop. Don't change your behaviors at all. Don't change your spending pattern. Don't create a budget and try to stick to it. Don't do a no spend November. Don't do that. Don't do that. It's not going to work for you. But we start to look at your patterns and where those patterns come from. And we talk about those patterns, and they solve themselves. Once you see it, you can't unsee it. It's really amazing. And not only that, but you have a pattern with money, and it extends to everything else. That same pattern you have with money, you're taking it to communication in your relationship. You're taking it to work with you, how productive you are. It's the same pattern. And so the beautiful thing is that once we fix that pattern with your money, it just spreads to everything. And so now people are getting like raises and promotions at work, because all of a sudden they're more productive. Their marriages are stronger because they communicate better. They're not triggered all the time by certain things. They're able to actually, instead of being very reactive with their kids, they're able to like be calm and also be a mentor for their kids with money. Whereas before they was like, I just don't want to screw my kids up. And now it's like, oh no, I can actually give something to my kids that'll be helpful to them, or grandkids. So it's really cool. I love it. I love the program.
That's a huge difference, right? What you just said there. I don't want to screw my kids up, but not having the tools to not screw them up. Because as you're thinking that, you're probably already doing it.
Yeah.
Instead of being like, well, I know what to do, and it's going back to what you said earlier. It's like, so I'm not going to focus on how I don't want to screw them up. I'm going to focus on what I can teach them to empower them, to make them better. That's really good.
Different energy, right? It's like a totally different energy.
Yeah. A last question as we wrap this up. So I want to encourage everybody to go to 1millionspenders.com, which is your website, but also there's a spenders quiz, and I'm going to go back and put this in this episode, the financialschoolforspenders.com/spenders quiz. Go there, and they can take a financial quiz. I guess give them a little bit of detail about that so they understand what that's about.
It's a really quick assessment. It's only 5 questions, so it only take you about 7 minutes. But through these 5 questions, these are like the biggest target areas for people that trigger things with their spending, and you can see what your pattern is. So most people have 1 or 2 patterns that are at play. And once you take that quiz and you get 5 answers, it gives you all the details for the answer that you got, and you can see, and you'll probably be like, oh yeah, I do this, right? It'll help you see this is a pattern. So we have winners, seekers, runners, and protectors. And those inform just about everyone I've ever coached. And then we have savers, and we have evolved spenders, people who have worked on their money on their own and gotten so far. And so you'll be able to identify yourself when you take the quiz, and then we'll tell you how you can cure it on the other side of it. So it's really fun.
Very cool. I love that. So I want to thank you for being here. This has been an awesome conversation, very enlightening, very insightful. I love what you do. I want to ask, when it comes to shame, what do we do with the shame that comes from money, right? So this is maybe a bigger question, but something that came to my mind, because that's people who struggle with money, there's a lot of shame there.
Yep.
What do we do with that?
So shame is an emotion. And so we're going to treat shame like we treat all the emotions. We're going to feel it, because that's the problem with most of the time. We don't feel our emotions. We either distract from them by eating, drinking, shopping, whatever, or we try to stuff them down and they don't go anywhere. They just keep popping up. But any of your emotions, they will last about 90 seconds if you just feel it. A minute and a half, that's all it takes. You have a minute and a half. You can schedule it in the shower with the other things that you're doing. Like, you're just going to feel it, right? And so, as I was saying before, we allow it. Like, you name it. You say, I feel ashamed about my money. And if you were talking to me, I'd say, of course you do, right? So already it takes some of the power away because you're not hiding it anymore. You're saying it to another person, and that person is not going, oh, really? Why? What did you do? Right? It's like, no, I'm going, yes, of course. You should feel ashamed. We all feel ashamed about different things. You feel ashamed about your money, go ahead. And I actually teach people how to process it so they can feel it, because behind that shame is something that your body wants to tell you. But if you're so afraid to feel the shame, you'll never get to the message. And our bodies are so wise. We're connected to the divine, and there's always a message, and it's always positive.
Yeah. Amen. Love that. It's so good. So this has been wonderful. Once again, I encourage everybody to talk to Franchelle Caesar, 1millionspenders.com. Take that financial spenders quiz. Anything you want to leave the audience with before we sign off?
Well, I've had such a good time talking to you, and I really appreciate meeting you and being able to be a guest on your podcast. So I just want to tell people, like, subscribe, go to the YouTube channel, subscribe to the Unstuck movement. It's amazing the work that you're doing, and I'm just grateful that you're doing this work.
Thank you so much. Thank you. I very much appreciate that. This has been the Unstuck movement. This has been a true testimony of breakthrough. We'll see you next time.